The European Parliament is a very powerful parliament, in certain areas more powerful than most national parliaments. There's one big difference between the European Union and the United States. The United States have a motto, out of many make one. The Europeans didn't reach that, and we don't want to. Our motto is united in diversity. We want to keep our traditions, but of course we have to come to a common understanding and a definition. We have totally 27 different systems how you can run as a candidate in the European elections. We should have common standards. That is what we are working on. But unfortunately not yet successfully.
How many years you've been working on this?
2018, I think, is the last file.
6 years.
Yeah, there's already
very fast moving European Union.
File.
I love it.
I honestly think if people would know how we work here in the European Parliament, they would really admire this.
It will be more sexy.
Maybe that is. I don't know. You know, the problem of the Europeans is that we are very small. We have two kinds of states in Europe. Small states and those states who don't know yet they are small. But small are they all, compared to China, more than 1 billion, India, more than 1 billion.
You are too small to act in this, especially
Yes.
when I'm from Cyprus, a country with 1 million population. This is nothing.
We only count in the world when we stay together. And what a fascinating institution it is. It is the best the Europeans ever invented, this European Union. But we have to make it great again, like Trump would say.
Great again. We have the coolest people here in the parliament, one of the coolest people. Actually, he's disguised as a politician, serious politician, but inside him, he has a spirit and he's fun. I promise, guys, you're going to see it. He doesn't look fun, but he's Sven. Tell us some stuff about you, that you are the chair of AFCO and what does that mean, and we're going to talk about how the EU function and all this stuff. But tell us some stuff about you first.
Yeah, my background is a German law professor, European Union, public international and constitutional law. And that quite fits well with my position here in the Parliament, where I'm the chairman of the Committee on Constitutional Affairs, meaning we deal with the treaties, treaty change, treaty amendment, treaty interpretation, also our own rules of procedure here in the House. That is what we do. Sometimes it sounds boring, but sometimes it's quite exciting.
What treaties mean, and also what does it mean to be the chair of AFCO committee? What is your job actually? So, but treaties, I allow you to answer whatever question you want.
Yes, treaty means the European Union is not a state like nation states. It is founded on two international treaties, the Treaty on the European Union and the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. That's quite a fancy name that came from the past when the United Kingdom didn't want to have a constitution, a European constitution, so they called it Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. That's the fundament for the European Union, which establishes the European Union. No? Those 27 member states agreed an international agreement and they called it Treaty on the European Union and Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. And in that treaty, which comes from Lisbon Treaty, 2012, it entered into force, and there were other treaties before, the Rome Treaty.
Yes, and how is evolving these treaties from the time that started the European Union?
Exactly. The idea was originally, after the Europeans fought wars for 2,000 years, how can we bring peace, long-lasting peace to this continent? And the idea of the grandfathers of the European Union, the European Economic Union, was to combine the social market economies together with trading with each other, reducing barriers, so that if Germany wants to start again a war against France or Poland, they would harm their own economy in the same time, so they would stop of fighting against each other. And then we had the common market. It's a customs union, that we don't have customs tariffs inside the European Union and a common customs tariff outside, 2/3 member states. And that is the success story of the Europeans, that we have peace. That is the idea of the European Union. The main idea is creating peace through international treaties. And that is what we are also working on, because since the Lisbon Treaty, 2012, the European Parliament, and there we come now to the European Parliament's Committee on Constitutional Affairs, has the right to amend the treaties. Of course, all member states have to give their consent, but we can do proposals, what we must change to enhance the capability to act of the Europeans.
How different are the treaties now in 2012 when they were agreed in comparison to 50 years ago when the European Union was formed? Is it very different?
Very, very different. Mostly on
and also,
competencies.
how did they evolve? Like, do the member states get it and they change it? It was always the European Parliament that was influencing them to change.
Not
and
at
the
all.
European Commission explained.
Not at all. The European Commission started with they called them high authority. Why high authority? The basic idea to create this long-lasting peace that the war industries, coal and steel, should be brought under a supranational authority so that not Germany can decide on the coal and steel production, but a supranational authority, the high authority, which is today the Commission, where all the member states, the 6 founding member states, decided together on coal and steel, that it was not only Germany. That was the basic idea. The European Parliament in the beginning was a parliament where national parliaments sent members, but that totally changed. Now we have since 1979, we have a directly elected European Parliament. And the European Parliament is nearly equally treated with the Council, where the ministers of the member states sit in legislation. The European Parliament is a very powerful parliament, in certain areas more powerful than most national parliaments. What we see today here, and this week with the hearings of the commissioners, they have a very high democratic legitimization in the end, because the European Parliament has to give its consent to each individual commissioner. That is not the case in most national states, where usually the Chancellor or the Prime Minister appoints, or the Federal President appoints members of cabinet. Here, the member states propose a person, the Commission President agrees, and then the European Parliament has to give its consent. So it's a very strong and powerful parliament, and that changed a lot. And second, what also changed, of course, a lot is the competencies.
We need to unfold some things right there, because we need to give context to some people. So, and also for me to understand exactly how we could change the treaties. So there is the Commission on top, which is Ursula von der Leyen and her team, and also is the European Parliament and the European Council. And we are kind of deciding between the 3 Commission is proposing stuff, and we're deciding, it's a trialogue between us to change stuff. But how EU treaties are being changed? So the European Commission need to propose them, and then it needs to come to the committee that you are chair, and then they need to decide all together, and the Parliament decide, and then explain us what's kind of the process there. Because when I came here, I understood that this is not, we talk here that is common knowledge, everyone here, but outside this house, nobody understands this, so we need to speak in simple ways for everyone to understand, and me, since I'm new here.
With international treaties, it is quite similar to in private life. When you have a contract, they call it contract, and you of course can change or amend a contract. With the European treaties, it's either the European Commission or the European Parliament or the Council, which can bring on the table proposals how to change or amend the treaties. And then there is usually for years, last time it took, I don't know, more than 12 years, 20 years maybe, negotiations between the Parliament and the Member States, because the Member States are still the masters of the treaties. The Member States, within their national constitutional setting, have to give their consent on changing the treaties. In some Member States, like France and the Netherlands, a referendum by the people is needed. In Germany, a 2/3 majority of the 2 chambers of Parliament.
So it's impossible almost to change them fundamentally.
At least really difficult, that is true.
So what you are doing in your committee if you cannot change basically stuff?
We simply can make proposals to change. And we are deeply convinced, I don't know whether we have a majority for that always or a big majority, that there are certain policy fields, for example, defense, maybe the most important. We cannot defend ourselves, we Europeans, because we have 128 weapon systems. The Americans have 27, so we don't have the capacity to
explain that 100 whatever
weapon systems.
What does that mean? What does it mean? What do you mean by weapon
different
systems?
Standards, different technologies. We have a French defense industry, a German defense industry. They don't work together, and that makes it very inefficient and very pricey. A German tank costs by far more than a tank from South Korea or a tank from the United States,
So the treaties need to change for us to have to share knowledge between our stuff that we're developing, weapons and all this stuff. So the treaties need to change.
Yeah, to a
so
certain
you are
extent.
working on in the parliament, in your committee, to propose.
We work on proposals.
We need to change. Okay, and exactly. You are going to propose it, and then the council needs to agree, and then the commission needs to agree, and then if they agree, then the member states needs to agree.
Absolutely,
as
yes.
well. And let's talk about some examples in the past, because maybe I can ask you in the end as well. I asked what's the best thing, you've been here for another 5 years, this is your second mandate. Well, I asked you what was your achievement in this AFCO committee as well, what do you think you did? Maybe you can answer later what you did, but what are some stuff general in the AFCO committee that was successes? Change in the European treaties, because we can talk all the way, it's good to do, but what is some actionable?
Yeah, here you have a point to a certain extent, because it's right that we, for example, deal with an electoral law, and we would like to have a new electoral law. That needs also the consent of the member states, of the council. Spain is blocking that, so we were not successful, if you want so. We have a file.
Can you explain what you needed? So you needed the Spain to comply, to agree with this?
Give the consent to the proposal,
and then
which we have done.
About the army thing?
Both, about the army thing, if you change or amend the treaties. But it is true that for the common defense industry, we could also work together without changing or amending the treaties. But for the electoral law file, for example...
Electoral law file means?
For the European elections, how do we vote people? How do we have candidates? We have totally 27 different systems, how you can run as a candidate in the European elections.
Interesting. What are some differences
Let me give you an example. For example, as far as I know...
We're getting in tangents, which is totally okay. We just follow our curiosity.
Yeah. In Greece, for example, the president of a party drafts a list with 42 names, as far as I know, and then the voters can decide by a preferential voting. Or in Italy, voters have to write the names of candidates on the ballot paper. In Germany, we usually have boards of the parties who draft a proposal, and then a party convention votes for a list. Voters receive a list.
It needs to be more fair between all the same method among all the countries, right? To be fair.
A bit more democratic also in some member states. We should have common standards. That is what we are working on in the Constitutional Affairs Committee.
Successfully?
But unfortunately not yet successfully.
How many years you've been working on this?
2018, I think, is the last file.
6 years.
Yeah, there's already a second...
Very fast-moving European Union. I love it. And it's like common sense that this should be the case.
Yeah, it should be common sense. That's true.
And then who is blocking it? Spain, you said?
In the moment, Spain. They have constitutional issues with that file because of their minority parties which are in the government or where the government is depending.
And if one big party in Spain decides that they is not favoring them, maybe it's not to their interest to change this because then it's blocking the whole European Union.
Yeah. I mean, that is a general problem of all Western democracies, that the electoral law is, of course, always controversial. But here we are really blocked. It's maybe not the most important thing where Europeans are blocked when we speak about back to defense or energy union or AI, artificial intelligence, data. And so we all our economic competitiveness, there we must really work that the Europeans become stronger and speak with one voice worldwide. You know, the problem of the Europeans, I see, is that we are very small. We have two kinds of member states. Jean-Claude Juncker, I think the former Commission President, predecessor of Ursula von der Leyen, said that once, that we have two kinds of states in Europe. Small states and those states who don't know yet they are small. But small are they all. Compared to China, more than 1 billion. Compared to India, more than 1 billion. South Asia, more than 1 billion people. So we are only 500 million. Our common market is the biggest common market of the world. We have some influence with that. When we speak about standards, for example, how polluted is cherry juice or apple juice, so that is decided here. And when we are powerful, then we can set standards for the world, also through trade agreements. And that is the reason why we, I think, must focus and Europeans must wake up that when we work together, when we enhance our capability to act in the world, then we are really sovereign. No state today, no European member state is sovereign in the moment. But
because we are too small to act in this, especially
Yes.
when I'm from Cyprus, a country
Yeah.
with 1 million population. This is nothing, basically nothing compared to anything. So so you're basically saying the only way to move forward in this world that we are moving to, China, United States, Russia, India, and Japan becoming so superpowers, the only way to compete is as a whole.
Yes,
and we need to.
I'm deeply convinced. I don't say that any issue in Europe is also a topic for the European Union.
As a whole, what it means, we're not. So you don't think what we have now is as a whole?
No, in many topics the European Union is still very small. People sometimes think and claim that 80% of the laws are decided here on the European level, which is not true, but this is a common myth since many years. By far less. UKIP, or the Nigel Farage party in the United Kingdom, they came up with a study which was speaking about 10-11%, and they are most critical against the European Union. So I trust that study more than the pure statistics for accomplishing the common market. There we have a lot of Excel sheets, and that is a lot of paper.
That's actually interesting. Maybe we'll have a research team as well to ask questions. So, but I don't know if they're going. Let's ask them to see how much.
I mean, you see that already from the budget. The budget of the European Union is very small. The budget of the member states is very big. When you look about the whole social security system is nearly all national competence. The education system, most of the cultural system, the judicial system, inner affairs, most of it is national competence, and the budgets of the member states is by far bigger, larger than that of the European Union. I don't say that any issue, any topic in Europe is also a topic for the European Union, but in those policy fields which I already mentioned, we need to enhance the capability to act as Europeans, and we can only when we speak with one voice, we will be listened in the world.
Yes. Going back to the treaties. So I asked you some success that we had change in the treaties. You didn't recall anything big? Am I correct?
Not within my time. In my time, the treaties have been changed fundamentally in 2009, entering into force 2012. Since then, they remained.
What was the change?
That was a huge change. For example, the naming of the institutions to a certain extent changed.
We changed the names. What a big!
No, but also that Parliament became an equal legislator.
By the way, guys, I'm not a Eurosceptic. I love European Union, but I want to be critical about the...
Of course, we have deficits, and we also have democratic deficits, and it wouldn't help the European Union. As you already realized, I'm really deeply convinced European. But if we ignore the critics, if we simply silence about any democratic deficit, which we also face, that they are there, also with the institutions, how to elect the Commission President or how to elect the Commission.
I have a problem with how we elect Ursula von der Leyen.
Why?
I don't think.
Did you vote for her? Okay, that's secret. The secret ballot.
The poll. I put a poll, and people didn't want. 80% of the people, 300,000 people voted, and 80% of them didn't want her. So.
Okay. How many of them lived in Europe?
But I did this also in my country, Cyprus, which everyone was from Cyprus, and it was similar percentage, 75%. Mm-hmm. But anyways, okay, let's aside these democratic deficits and all this stuff. So you
didn't. Let's keep that point on. You didn't like how she is elected or how the Commission President is like. What would you change?
Well, or maybe her getting directly elected in the European elections like we do from the citizens, their campaigns, or maybe a member of the European Parliament that is campaigning among the members of the European Parliament that they are directly elected from the people, and then we vote among ourselves who will be something along these lines that is more democratic, not she's coming from the sky and then she decides beforehand with all the political groups what she will give from here, and then they are forced because she gave them enough stuff to say yes to them, and for the political parties to support her, and then we just have the yes or no. I don't think that's the most fair democratic thing ever.
I would agree with you, and in the Constitutional Affairs Committee...
Even if you voted for her?
Yes, but that doesn't matter. Huh? I voted for her, but that doesn't mean that in theory I think the system can be changed. We in the Constitutional Affairs Committee, in our treaty amendment proposal, we said one thing what you just already mentioned, that it should be Parliament which proposes the candidate running in Parliament, not the Council. I once wrote a paper, academic paper, with a title to pick a face that runs the union. One vote to pick the face that runs the union. That would lead in the direction of a direct election. We can discuss that, no? But I also think that the mechanism we apply in the moment is not very satisfying.
Yes, but also I don't think this is the biggest problem ever in the EU. There is also other big problems as well, also the democratic deficits. There is also other big problems. But again, going back to your point, so treaties change in 2009 to 12. What was the substantial changes? For us to understand what treaties means to change.
Yeah, it means competencies. What is the European Union allowed to do? That we, for example, have a common currency, that the common market is accomplished, then we have environmental policy issues.
But this was not from before, so it changed?
It changed, yeah, it moved. For example, we had 3 pillars before that treaty change: common market, security, and external policy. And the internal and security policy or internal policy was included into the treaties. The common and defense security policy is still on an intergovernmental level, where we don't work together as Europeans with supranational institutions, but negotiating between the governments, and that slows down usually the process. If we work on an intergovernmental level here in Brussels, it's usually a little bit quicker done, but when we need the consent of Parliament and the Council, we must also not oversee when we don't have a qualified majority or a majority voting in the Council, then each member state, the slowest member state, can block us. Usually the example is the sanctions, even if that is maybe a controversial issue. But here, usually, we need a unanimous voting in Council, which means we have to wait for the slowest. And when we have 27 member states, and then we are talking about newcoming states from the Balkans or Georgia, Ukraine, and so, then we would be even more member states. And the more we are, the more difficult it is to reach a solution or to reach a common opinion.
So we try to change the veto kind of process.
That is part of this proposal. That it's trickier. In theory, I would definitely agree with those who say we would need to take more decisions by majority voting. But when we speak about...
Of course, as a German, because they are more, you have these kind of problems here in the parliament.
But that is, I mean, the Germans are underrepresented in the European Parliament. Huh? If we would have a proportionate system, we would have to be many more. Yeah, population-wise. Huh? Malta has 6 members, Germany has 96. Well, you have 6 and you are 1 million, and Germany has 96 and we are 83 million, so that is a bit unfair. We have 1 commissioner with 83 million people. You have 1 commissioner with 1 million people.
We're so getting to the real fight, guys.
To the audience.
But you need to protect the minorities.
Well, that is what we always also want to do. No, but I mean, it's more likely that you're from Cyprus.
It's very beautiful that this argument was, because people need to understand kind of the concept.
I mean, voting in Council is a bit more balanced. There, the vote of Germany counts more proportionate to the population.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's not 1 state, 1 vote in the Council. But here in Parliament, we are underrepresented, but I think that's okay. Because it's not it's not possible otherwise. Otherwise, we would be more than, I don't know, 3,000 members or so.
So, okay, let's say for the defense, common defense to happen. So, it's almost like it will be 10 years of negotiations. It needs to be like, it's so complicated, but possible.
It is possible, but I mean, they started with a defense Union right after the war.
And also maybe we can talk why defense is important. Guys, if we don't have a common defense, then our enemies or everyone is not taking us that seriously because they don't see us as a threat, never. Because if we don't have we cannot protect ourselves, the common thing.
And we have seen what happened with
So we don't have
Ukraine.
leverage and power. There is a lot of stuff that are missing.
That's obvious, huh? For us here, it's very obvious.
I
think for many people, it's very obvious.
It was not obvious for me coming here. I don't know anything. So this was a shocking thing that I
So you learned that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you can learn a lot here. It's a very inspiring area.
Yes. And a lot of clever people in this house.
Yes,
a lot, the high level of people.
I honestly think if people would know more, and that is why I like your approach, that you communicate and that you explain in a very simple way, because if people would know how we work here in the European Parliament, they would really admire this house.
It will be more sexy.
Maybe that is. I don't know.
Okay, so we talked about the treaties generally. Kind of we got a feeling this is what the basic thing that I wanted to talk today. But I wanted to ask also, in the beginning, I asked you this question. You are the chair of this committee, AFCO. What is AFCO? How many members it has, and what it means to be a chair, and how a committee functions, and what it means to be the president. And also how you got this position. You are from the EPP party is the biggest party in the European Parliament. It's around 200 members, 190 something.
Well, that is a bit difficult to explain, but the most powerful member of the European Parliament is called De Hond. De Hond was a Belgian, of course that is not a member of Parliament, it was a Belgian mathematics, how do you say, guy, who established a formula how to divide the positions in the Parliament, not only in the Parliament, a general formula. And we have 8 groups in the European Parliament. The European People's Party group is the biggest group, and that means out of, I don't know how many, 22 or so committee chairs, we get a certain number, a quarter of it. And the same formula applies to the national delegations. How many committee chairs the national delegations
get? How many chairs it gets?
I forgot. A little bit more than a quarter, 30% or so. I don't know how many it is.
30%. So it's about 5 chairs of. There is 20 committees. So you have 5-6 chairs.
Yeah, I don't know by heart, but that is a proportionate system. Huh? We are the biggest group, so we get most of the most chairs.
And what it mean? What is your work when you are a chair?
Well, you.
By the way, we're going to put some videos now. You guys understand, like he's moderating the conversation when AFCO committee is happening between the MEPs,
yes.
kind of. But yeah, tell us a bit more on.
I mean, I sit in the front and chair the meeting. I set the agenda. With the final say, always have the so-called coordinators, the representative of the groups, who must give their consent.
You send the agenda. Wow.
I set the agenda.
That's a big thing.
But I mean,
explain what setting the agenda means.
Oh man, well, it means, for example,
what are the box that you are working with? What are the limitations? Can you put YouTube lessons in the agenda?
YouTube what?
YouTube lessons in the agenda.
I don't know.
I want to understand what's the limitations of setting.
Yeah, the limitations is basically that the political groups agree. So it is limited.
So you are the one proposing, and then the coordinators
have to give their consent.
The representative of the coordinators of each political group, they need to give their consent. So you are saying, let's talk about army defense, common army.
Yes.
And then they say, yes, no.
Yeah.
And if you have majority, then you pass this topic. Let's bring this guy to speak to us. Yes, no. And then this is kind of how
exactly.
it works.
I give you 2 examples. We will deal in the Constitution.
By the way, guys, this is where's my mic? This is the first time that I learn about this.
I proposed, for example, that we should have a report on artificial intelligence and democracy. And then I go back to the representatives of the groups and I ask them in a meeting, do you agree? Or I propose to have a symposium on the quest for the rule of law. which divides us in the moment pretty much in the European Union, because we have a different understanding what rule of law, état de droit, or Rechtsstaat means. Has a different meaning in different member states. And it divides us a lot.
Yeah.
That is really controversial debate. But then I
That
tried
we can
in my
have
meeting.
in one of these. By the way, guys, sorry, I like this interacting you. Sorry, I know you love me. I know you love me. So these guys, what we did here, I want to continue doing. This is just a sample. We're going to try different MEPs. We're going to try some debates. So I want this to be a format that we're going to continue. So write down in the comments what you think, if you like this, if you have any feedback, if you like this guy that we brought and all this stuff. So
you can
let us
say
know.
what you said last week. A bit boring but cool, he said.
Yes. He has a big spirit inside.
But it's just the suit and so which lets us appear a bit more boring than you.
Yeah. No. Generally, the way that you talk, the way that you act. Come on. But I'm joking. You are amazing. Okay, let's go back to we were discussing about the rule of law.
The agenda and the rule of law.
Wow, I'm such an amazing podcaster. I remember where we left. I'm joking, guys. Forgive me for being stupid.
No, I mean, I proposed them that we should have a symposium on the rule of law. Inviting, for example, the President of the European Court of Justice, because we also in the European Union have a sharing of powers. We don't only have the Parliament, the Council, the Commission, but we also have a court, the European Court of Justice. Inviting maybe the Commission President as well, and then with academics have a discussion on the meaning of, on the definition of the rule of law, because this divides us a lot in the moment. When the rule of law is broken, we had this bad example in Poland. We have really issues in Hungary as well with corruption. In other member states as well. Romania with the socialists, for example, or Malta with killing journalists, which the government didn't.
Rule of law. Before I came in this house, I didn't know what the fuck it is. So can you explain us what the rule of law it is and why people are interpreted in different ways?
The rule of law limits the decisions of politicians. The rule of law is the governing principle that law governs and prevails, and not human beings, politicians. So we are limited. The rule of law gives us a framework, particularly fundamental rights give us a framework. We cannot, in a democracy, decide everything we want to decide. For example, if there would be a majority in the European Parliament to come back to torture, that would be forbidden by the rule of law, by another international treaty, and by our own rules. So it's limited. Minority rights,
systems in place basically to keep democracy functioning.
I would say that, yes. Absolutely. Yeah. It's the hard shoulders of democracy, the rule of law.
And sometimes it's between institutions, like keeping accountability between institutions and all this stuff. Okay, we've got the rule of law. And the debate, the problem that you're going to bring to the committee is like rule of law in Romania is different, how they interpret it, and the context that is put in Romania is different than what Germany. And this creates problems.
Absolutely. For example,
what types of problems?
In Germany, the rule of law, Rechtsstaatlichkeit, is very strong. There are reasons for that, starting with the old poets like Immanuel Kant and going on with the history of Germany that we suffered from 2 dictatorships. And then we have a very successful institution in Germany, which is the German Constitutional Court, which was established after the war. And human beings, individuals, can bring lawsuits against the state, individual constitutional complaints, when the state, parliament, government, any state authority infringes the rights, human rights of an individual, then we can go to court. And in the German constitutional order, the rule of law, the law has always to prevail over any political decision. That is to a certain extent different in France.
Yes.
In France, they have also a word which sounds very similar, état de droit, but that is maybe a translation of the rule of law, but the meaning is different. So we have legal, cultural differences in Europe, which we must overcome. we must keep our national identities, and that is what we want. Because there's one big difference between the European Union and the United States. The United States have a motto, e pluribus unum. Out of many, make one. The Europeans didn't reach that, and we don't want to. Our motto is united in diversity. We want to keep our traditions, also legal traditions, also national nuances of the rule of law, maybe. But of course, we have to come to a common understanding and a definition.
And that's a whole different debate. Which one is better and which one will produce the best results for the people and all this stuff between the United States system and the EU system. Sometimes something that is successful, you cannot apply it to different contexts and have the same result. So,
but it creates problems in daily life. When you remember the Euro crisis, the European Central Bank, what is also an institution of the European Union, we have 7. The missing one, which I didn't mention, is the Court of Auditors in Luxembourg. But the European Central Bank took a decision, and the German Constitutional Court thought that this decision was ultra vires, meaning against the treaties, which we talked about already, establishing the European Union. And in other member states, like in France, they would simply have said, well, yes, okay, maybe, but it was a political decision, and if there is a majority, a huge majority, then that can prevail. I'm a bit simplifying now, but that's, for example, one example where we had a controversy, where we were fighting against each other, or with each other in a way. And the solution for that is that we create a dialogue between the different courts, national constitutional courts. Not each member state does have a constitutional court, but many have, and the European Court of Justice. And that would bring us, in my dream also, or my vision, closer together and not divide us as Europeans. Because I come back, we are only, have a say, we only count in the world when we stay together.
Yes, we only count in the world when we stay together. Let's kind of remain on this. I'm curious, this was the first one. What do you think about this conversation?
I would need a feedback. Is that still too academic? Is it too abstract? Is it understandable? What do you think about it? But a deeper knowledge of all that, what's going on here with the European Union, and what a fascinating institution it is. It is the best the Europeans ever invented, this European Union. But we have to make it great again, like Trump would say.
Great again. Let's make Europe great again. And I want to end with this question. By the way, I want to just say some words about you. I don't compliment people often. My team says. But you've been to how many countries so far?
107.
107 countries so far. And we went together in Georgia in a mission to observe the elections, where we were of the 7 MEPs that we went there. And it was amazing. I saw that you are excited, you have a lot of knowledge, you like to have fun as well, and you had to explore as well. So it was very beautiful how this relationship was formed. It was very natural, and that's why I like when going to these trips, because when in the European Parliament, it's very unnatural way to develop relationships, but there you are in the planes, you are in the taxis, you go out to eat, and all this stuff is very natural, so it was very cool. Yes, and when I say you are one of the coolest people disguised as boring person in the European Union, I really mean it. And the last question is, you are going to die in 40 seconds if you will die. What do you think you want your last words to be in this planet? Maybe it's to your parents, to your family, or to the world. What do you want the last words to be?
Well, maybe I would use your platform, which I'm doing in the moment, and would say empathy is maybe the most important character people can have, to think about that the other one may also be right. That is important for democracy, that is important for keeping peace in the world. Maybe the other could be right. Empathy is the most important character. I would spread that to the world.
So no cordon sanitaire. I'm joking. Okay, thank you. I love you and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for watching. Peace. Until next time.